Chapter 276, A Complex Battle. Unlike what Odaka had thought, Fujin hadn't run away. Instead, he just hid his chakra signature. And thanks to the cover provided by the sand tsunami, no one could see, hear, or smell him. He immediately attacked Gaara with the intention of making him bleed. However, he was surprised as he thought, the air bullets breaking through is reasonable. After all, the sand that defended him was too little. But why did he get injured so much? Doesn't he have the sand armor? Fujin observed him properly and realized, I see. I guess he hasn't created that technique yet. He turned his attention towards the Suna ninjas on the other side of the tsunami and muttered, well, sucks to be you guys. Odaka activated his chakra field once again. His eyes widened as he shouted, that assassin is still here. Bastard hid his chakra signature. Fujin detected the chakra field and immediately used wind instantaneous body jutsu. Odaka sensed Fujin getting farther away and said, he escaped. Manabu asked, are you sure that he didn't hide his chakra again? It'll be annoying if he interferes when we are stopping Gaara. Odaka replied, yes. Last time his chakra signature just disappeared. This time, I sensed him leaving. Besides, I doubt he would want to stay when Gaara is losing control. They could still hear Gaara's screams as his body began transforming. The sand tsunami had lost its power and was settling down. But other than Eagle and the three elite Jounins, the rest stayed away in fear. Susumu moved towards Gaara while weaving hand signs. Manabu shouted, don't let him fall asleep. Susumu already knew it. He reached as close to Gaara as he could and completed his hand signs. Demise of the rebirth. Despite being partially transformed, the genjutsu hit Gaara. As the genjutsu took hold, a serene sensation washed over him, like a gentle breeze on summer's eve. In an instant, his tumultuous emotions were caressed and quelled. It was as if the weight of anger, hatred, pain, and panic were lifted. The world around him transformed into a dreamland adorned by sakura blossoms. As Gaara watched the sakura petals floating with the wind, he felt a soothing sensation. The illusion cocooned him in a realm of tranquility, offering respite from the burdens of reality. For a fleeting moment, he found solace in the beauty of this ephemeral sanctuary. Unfortunately, he couldn't stay in this world forever. A wave of anger burned in his heart as Shikaku transferred his chakra into Gaara's body to break the illusion and further transform the boy. Susumu and the rest knew that the genjutsu wouldn't hold a Jinchuriki down for long. When Gaara opened his eyes, he saw 4 puppets surrounding him. His body was tied with metal strings held by the puppets, restricting his mobility. Gaara roared in rage as he began struggling. Odaka gritted his teeth and increased his control on his puppets to ensure that they wouldn't be sent flying. Fortunately, he wasn't alone. Manabu jumped high in the sky and blew an intense wind on Gaara. Gaara's knees bent. He felt an intense pressure falling down on him continuously. The Suna ninja sighed in relief on seeing Gaara being pinned down. However, Gaara opened his eyes and stared at Manabu. Manabu immediately had a bad feeling. The sand under Gaara's feet began moving. It instantly reached Manabu. Fortunately, Manabu was prepared and flickered out of the way. Gaara's eyes moved and landed on Odaka. Odaka immediately jumped as he felt the sand under his feet move. As soon as he jumped, multiple tentacles made of sand appeared and moved towards Odaka. Realizing the danger, Odaka opened a scroll and made a hand seal. Immediately, a huge turtle made of wood and metal appeared between him and the sand. The sand hit the belly of the turtle while Odaka landed on its back and immediately jumped towards Manabu. The sand tentacles were stopped. However, more sand moved and completely engulfed the turtle. Odaka's remaining 4 puppets were also engulfed and crushed by sand. He sighed and muttered, "This is going to be a painful fight." Manabu nodded. The cost of building high-quality puppets was quite high. He said, "Fortunately, we bought enough time." Odaka nodded as he saw that Susumu had returned with 2 ninjas behind him. Susumu looked at the situation and instructed, "We will hold him down. As soon as we do, use your techniques to seal him temporarily." The 2 ninjas nodded nervously. They were sent along with Susumu and Gaara in case such a scenario happened. However, despite being trained, they had very little experience in sealing a Jinchuriki. After all, if something went wrong in Suna, Raza would take care of it. They would have no reason to act. Odaka, Manabu, and Susumu began fighting Gaara again. Meanwhile, Eagle stood next to the 2 sealing ninjas to ensure that Gaara wouldn't harm them. After 5 minutes of intense battle, they finally managed to pin Gaara down once again. Susumu shouted, "Now!" Immediately, the 2 sealing ninjas summoned and opened a giant roll of cloth. Cloth binding technique. The cloth moved towards Gaara and began wrapping itself around it. Gaara struggled, but he couldn't get out of it. In a few seconds, he was completely covered by the cloth. The Suna ninjas finally sighed in relief. Gaara was stopped. They and the city close to them were safe. Susumu grabbed a sealing tag and walked towards Gaara in order to ensure that he couldn't break free. However, his eyes widened. He looked down at his chest in fear and disbelief. A kunai that was dyed in blood had pierced through his heart. The Suna ninjas were shocked as well. A second ago they were happy that Gaara was sealed. Now, they watched in disbelief as the strongest genjutsu specialist in Suna closed his eyes and passed away. However, Fujin had no expression on his face. He didn't waste any time celebrating and instead looked at Manabu and Odaka. Wind release, infinite breakthrough jutsu. A massive windstorm was shot out towards them. Odaka hurriedly summoned a defensive puppet and the 2 hid behind it. However, both had grim expressions. Manabu asked, "Didn't you say that he ran away?" Odaka answered, "I definitely sensed him running away. Unless he kept hiding and sent a shadow clone away to fool me. Or maybe he ran away and returned while hiding his chakra. After all, we were busy stopping Gaara." Manabu didn't question any further. After all, it was pointless. He said, "This scum is very cunning. We were on guard while fighting Gaara. If he had attacked then, Susumu would have dodged or blocked him. Instead, he waited until we had won and dropped our guard momentarily." Odaka nodded and said, "He almost reminds me of Yellow Flash. In the Third War, we lost most of our elite jounins to his sneak attacks. Other than Tsunade, he was the main reason that we had to accept our defeat and form an alliance with Konoha." Manabu and Odaka's expressions became even uglier. They had speculated that the assassin was from Konoha. Both thought, if Konoha has gained such a strong fighter who is willing to go to such an extreme during peacetime, then a war with them would prove extremely costly. While Manabu and Odaka were hiding from the storm, Eagle took the opportunity to flicker behind Fujin and attacked him with his kunai. However, Fujin withdrew the kunai from Susumu's heart and blocked the attack. Wind release, air bullet jutsu. Eagle's eyes widened as he noticed the attack. He immediately jumped out of the way. Fujin let him go and instead spat out a fire on the cloth that had sealed Gaara. The 2 sealing ninjas shouted in horror, "No! Don't!" Unfortunately, Fujin had no intention to listen to them. Eagle's eyes widened as well. He immediately began weaving hand signs and building up his chakra. However, before he could complete his hand signs, he was forced to jump backwards. A kunai grazed past his left forearm, leaving a half-foot-long cut in it. He winced in pain but kept weaving hand signs. Water release, waterfall jutsu. Despite acting as fast as he could, the delay due to the pain meant that the cloth was already set on fire. A second later, a huge waterfall crashed down on the fire and doused it. At the same time, Manabu launched his own infinite breakthrough jutsu and neutralized Fujin's attack. He and Odaka appeared next to Eagle and asked, "Where is the assassin?" Eagle said, "He is th." His words were stuck in his mouth as he noticed that Fujin and Susumu's dead body had both disappeared. However, before they could investigate, a furious roar was heard through the desert. The Suna ninjas looked where Garo was sealed in grim expression as he broke out of the binding cloth. They began fighting him once again. Chapter 277, An Opportunity. Manabu and Odaka led the fight to suppress Garo once again. However, without Susumu and with the added threat of an assassin, the fight became much more difficult. Manabu shouted, "Yura! Take command of others and encircle Gara. Have sensors monitor the battlefield and immediately report if anyone senses that assassin." Being struck once, Manabu didn't want to risk getting attacked again. Suna's losses were already terrible. In its entire history, Suna had experienced such losses during peacetime very few times. If he and Odaka were also to die, then Suna would be in a terrible position. Not to mention, the assassin could also target their only Jinchuriki. As the Suna ninjas entered into a bitter struggle, the source of their suffering had already flickered tens of kilometers away. Fujin finally stopped and let out a sigh. He muttered, "What a mess. First, they let me kill nobles without any obstruction, and then they suddenly have over 100 ninjas defending one remote city with their Jinchuriki standing right on my escape route. If I didn't know how impulsive Garo was, I could have been in a pinch." He looked at Susumu's dead body in his hand and muttered, "Though it's not all bad. My genjutsu level was stuck for a long time. Other than the bringer of darkness, I don't have a high-level genjutsu that could create a significant impact in battle. I was wondering if I could use the wind to somehow use genjutsu. Sadly, the duties didn't leave me with much time. But now it seems to be a good thing. With his jutsus as the base, I would easily master high-level genjutsu in no time." Fujin carefully stored Susumu's body. He had no intention of trying to read his memories by himself. He looked back towards where the sand shinobi were fighting and analyzed, "In this battle, I only used wind and fire jutsus. Apart from it, I also exposed my high speed, strength, and expertise in chakra control, flickering and assassination. Sigh, it's a little more than what I planned to expose. But I did manage to keep my earth jutsus, vacuum jutsus, sword skills, and chakra flow a secret. Even if they investigate, they wouldn't analyze that this was me anytime soon. Though once I begin gaining fame, it won't be that difficult for their suspicions to fall on me." Fujin sighed. He could have never imagined that such a distant city would have an ambush made of one Jinchuriki, 3 elite jounins, dozens of jounins and hundreds of ninjas. He thought, "I should have quit after burning the food storage." Fujin weaved a few hand signs and slammed his hand on the ground. Summoning jutsu. Smoke appeared in front of Fujin. It slowly dispersed, exposing a large saber tooth holding the bloody leg of some wild animal in his mouth. He looked around and saw Fujin. Fujin said with a smile, "Kaito, it's good to see you again." Kaito continued eating as he asked, "Fujin, why did you call me?" Fujin replied, I am deep in enemy territory and have no idea how many are hiding around in ambush. Give me a lift. Kaido continued eating the leg and said, sure, give me a minute. He swallowed the entire leg and then spat out the bones and said, get on. Fujin disappeared and appeared on his back. Kaido jumped high and spread his wings wide. He flapped it a few times and quickly rose above the clouds. He looked below towards where Gaara was and said, your enemy seems quite strong. I can feel his chakra and bloodlust all the way up here. Unlike Kaido, Fujin couldn't feel anything. He said, it's a Jinchuriki. A human who hosts a tailed beast. That said, he is a child and has lost control. If he didn't, I'd be in deep trouble. Kaido nodded. Just based on the chakra fluctuations, he had no will to confront that being. He immediately began flying away toward the east. Fujin lay down on his back while enjoying the fresh air and gentle breeze. The last few weeks had been too tedious. He was on guard at all times due to being in enemy territory. Fujin closed his eyes and began meditating. Despite not having any seals, Fujin had noticed long back that meditating while flying above the clouds was much more effective than meditating in his meditation room. In addition, it had a soothing effect on his mind. In a world with ceaseless conflict and incessant schemes, he cherished this feeling. Unlike Fujin's calm mind, the deserts he flew over were in turmoil. After a long struggle, Manabu and Odaka managed to stop Gaara's rampage and returned him to his normal state. Unfortunately, the lives of four Chunins and one Jounin were lost in the process. Around them, hundreds of Suna ninjas were establishing a new perimeter. Dozens of sensors moved continuously in the desert to find where the assassin was hiding. Messenger birds were constantly being sent to keep everyone informed about the situation. A bit further from them, tens of thousands of people were migrating across the desert from Shunkyuto to nearby towns and villages that had the protection of the Suna ninjas. Hiding among them was the family of the dead noble Toshio. However, Fujin would have nothing to do with it. He had already left the entire matter behind him. Raza and the Tsunagakure Council would have to handle the aftermath of Fujin's actions. If they decide to retaliate, then Shikaku and Hiruzen would have to face the consequences of not properly defining Fujin's mission parameters. Fujin flew on Kaido's back for half a day. They left the land of wind behind and entered the land of rivers undetected. Kaido found an abandoned hill and finally landed. He asked, "Don't you want a lift all the way back home?" Fujin shook his head and thought, "Very few people know I have a summon. And even fewer know what my summon is or what their abilities are. Though I don't intend to hide them like my lightning jutsus, it's good to have another good trump card." Fujin replied, "No need, I can make the remaining journey myself as there shouldn't be any enemies here." Kaido replied, "All right." He disappeared in a cloud of smoke and returned to his home. Meanwhile, Fujin stretched for a bit and was about to move towards the land of fire when he heard a loud explosion. He turned his head to the left and squinted his eyes. Around 3 kilometers from his location, a forest fire had been started. He squinted his eyes and observed the location and analyzed, "A fight? At this time of the night? I wonder what's going on." He suppressed his chakra signature and flickered towards the location. His chakra reserves had already recovered and he didn't sense any terrible chakra. So he wasn't very worried. In the forests, 5 masked people were chasing after a man. The man was injured. There were multiple cuts on his body. In addition, his left hand had a huge burn mark due to an explosion. One of the masked men shouted, "Shigeki! Stop running and face consequences for your actions." Shigeki didn't say anything and continued running. His condition wasn't good. The masked men weren't angry. Instead, they looked at Shigeki with ridicule. They could have killed him long back. However, they were just having fun. Shigeki was aware of it. However, he continued running while praying, "Please give me one chance. Please. As long as I survive, I'll return stronger than ever. I'll avenge my family and kill that bastard." Fortunately or unfortunately, the direction he was running in was where Fujin had landed. Fujin reached the location quickly and observed from a distance. None of the 6 ninjas sensed his arrival. Fujin analyzed, "These 5 masked ninjas are from the special forces of Tanagakure. And is that Kasai Shigeki? Why are they chasing their own jounin?" Fujin had interacted with Shigeki a couple of times during his Umbu missions. He had a good impression of him. The man was decently strong for someone who wasn't from any major village and didn't have any strong bloodline. In addition, he was smart, loyal to his village and capable of leading large squads. Fujin followed them stealthily. Within a couple of minutes, he wondered, did he do something that irked the leaders of Tanagakure or the Land of River? The more he chased, the more sure Fujin became of his speculation. Especially after he observed Shigeki's facial expressions. A smile appeared on his face as he thought, "This is a good opportunity. I was hoping to find someone who was capable and in a desperate situation." However, his smile faded away and was replaced with a frown as he thought, "But this is too soon. I am not ready. I haven't finalized my plans or even have any concrete goals as of now." Chapter 278, Shiden. The masked men continued chasing Shigeki while occasionally throwing shurikens and explosion tags at him. Fujin followed them patiently for 45 minutes. He had changed his attire and got himself a new mask. Finally, one of the masked men stopped laughing and said, "He is reaching close to a cliff. He might try to jump off. Enough fun, let's kill him now. We still have to bring his dead body back. Otherwise, Kanji-sama might kill us as well." The other masked men got serious as well and said, "Yes, Captain." Immediately their speed increased. Shigeki noticed the cliff as well. He immediately began running towards it while thinking, "If they catch me, I'll die. I will try my luck by jumping off the cliff. If I survive, I will train and slaughter Kanji, his son, and his entire family." Unfortunately, one of the masked men appeared next to him. Shigeki's eyes widened. He immediately punched him. However, the masked man ducked and kicked his left leg, which had a huge burn mark. Shigeki screamed in pain. He lost his balance and fell on his face and slid across the ground. The fall aggravated his existing injuries and inflicted fresh ones that began bleeding as well. Despite the pain, he gritted his teeth and got up. However, as soon as he did, he saw the 5 masked ninjas standing in front of him. The captain raised his kunao and said, "Farewell, Shigeki." He swung his kunao at Shigeki's neck. Tears rolled down Shigeki's cheeks as he shouted, "Just give me one chance." The masked ninjas had a smirk on their faces. They had no mercy for Shigeki. Just when the kunao was about to cut his neck, the masked man's hand lost power. The kunao hit Shigeki's neck but caused no injury as it didn't have enough force to cut through. Meanwhile, Shigeki's eyes were wide open in shock. As if answering his prayers, the heads of all 5 masked ninjas were sent flying in an instant. In a second, their lifeless bodies collapsed to the ground. Suddenly, Shigeki felt a chill down his spine. He didn't dare move as he felt a sword resting on his neck. He felt that if he made any slight movement, his head would roll over just like others. He heard a cold voice asking, "Give you a chance for what?" He immediately said, "One of the elders in Tanagakura killed my entire family. I want a chance to live so that I can get stronger and get justice for my wife and daughter." Fujin was puzzled. He asked, "Why did he kill them?" Shigeki was silent. Tears rolled down his cheeks. His voice lost all spirit as he said, "His drunk son raped my daughter. He didn't know she was my daughter. In a rage, I beat him up and mutilated him to ensure that he can't do something so heinous to anyone else. I wanted to kill him as well, but I was stopped by my colleagues. That's when my tragedy began. Kanji couldn't retaliate at first as my colleagues backed me. Instead, he showed that he was upset with his son and scolded him. But in reality, he was plotting revenge. Slowly, Kanji made numerous allegations about me and spread ill rumors. When my reputation had fallen enough, his personal ninjas made a move against my family when I was out on a mission. They ambushed me as well, due to which I couldn't fight back." He stopped talking and broke down. Fujin sighed secretly but kept his sword on his neck. He thought, no wonder he is in such bad shape. Though Fujin knew about Shigeki, he wasn't aware of his family. But he knew that Shigeki was just in his early 30s. He didn't need to think much to understand what his daughter might have gone through. He let Shigeki cry out for some time. Finally, Shigeki calmed down. He asked, "Are you going to kill me?" Fujin didn't answer. Shigeki begged, "Could you please let me live for some time? I will get justice for my family and then kill myself. If not, could you please kill Kanji and his son after you kill me?" Fujin didn't answer and asked, "How will you kill your way into Tanagakura in your condition?" Shigeki replied, "I am not strong enough yet. I will train until I can get justice for my family." Fujin chuckled and said, "Strong enough to kill your way into a hidden village? You are too old for having such silly dreams. But I have a proposition for you. I was looking for a capable man to recruit to help me run my organization. You might be suitable for that job. As long as you do a good job, I'll help you get your justice. Either by yourself if you get sufficiently strong enough, or through my hands. What do you say?" Shigeki was surprised. He was expecting to die like the masked ninjas. Instead, their killer was trying to recruit him. He asked, "What organization do you want to create?" Fujin asked, "Does it matter as long as you get your justice?" Shigeki went silent. However, after a couple of minutes, he shook his head and said, "No. I won't join any organization that would make others suffer as I and my family did." Fujin withdrew his sword and replied, "Oh, it won't be that sort of an organization. No need to be bothered about that." Shigeki thought for a bit more. Fujin didn't disturb him. Finally, he got up with much struggle and bowed to Fujin and said, "Thank you for saving my life, Lord. I, Kasai Shigeki, am willing to work for your organization as long as you help me get justice for my family." Fujin nodded and extended his palm towards Shigeki. Chakra appeared on his palm and began healing Shigeki. Shigeki's eyes widened. He thought, I never thought that someone who could kill without a second thought would be a medical ninja. The wounds on Shigeki were all external wounds. Fujin healed all his wounds in a few minutes. He said, "Follow me." Fujin began running. Shigeki, who was now fully healed but low on chakra, followed Fujin. The two ran through forests for over a couple of hours and arrived at a cave. Shigeki was puzzled. The cave was quite small and there was no one there. Fujin entered the cave. This was the same cave where he had stopped while heading to the land of wind. He inscribed a few more seals and created a few hiding rooms in the cave. He said, "Shigeki, I have inscribed numerous seals in this cave. Unless someone accidentally enters the cave, no one will detect you. Even if someone does, you can hide in the 2 rooms I created. You will stay safe there." Shigeki asked in a puzzled voice, "Lord, are there any other members from the organization here?" Fujin replied, "You can call me Shiden. No need for any honorifics. And no. Currently, only you will be stationed here. Though I have recruited a few others, they are in different locations in other countries. You don't need to concern yourself with them for now." Shigeki nodded and asked, "All right, but what am I supposed to do?" Fujin replied, "Train, of course. Don't you want to get justice? You are free to train however you want. My plans for you will need a few years to implement. So stay around this place. When I am ready, I will come here to look for you." Shigeki was surprised. He thought, a few years. He recalled his family and thought, it's fine. I am not strong enough yet. I don't know what Shiden's intentions are, but he saved my life and gave me a safe environment to live in and train. Besides, he seems to be a leader of a huge organization. With such a big organization, getting revenge will be very easy. He bowed down and said, "Thank you for saving my life and giving me a safe place, Shiden. I will wait here for you." Fujin nodded and said, "Good. I'll take my leave. Train hard and get stronger." Shigeki replied with determination, "I will." Fujin nodded once again before turning and flickering away. Shigeki raised his head only to see that Fujin was nowhere to be seen. He thought, he is even faster than I imagined him to be. He left the cave and looked at the stars in the sky. His eyes became watery as he muttered, "Wait a few years for me. I will fight for your justice and come to be with you." He wiped his tears and a determined expression appeared on his face. He wasted no time and began training. A few kilometers away, Fujin stopped moving. He quietly changed his clothes and for the first time in a couple of months changed back to his real appearance. However, he had a weird expression on his face and his cheeks had a hint of redness. He muttered, "Since when did my ability to bullshit reach this level?" Chapter 279, The Difficulties in Creating an Organization. Fujin was shocked at how much he had lied to Shigeki. What other members of the organization? He was the only member. Heck, there wasn't any organization in the first place. The only place where it existed was Fujin's head. Fujin thought, I was so embarrassed by his questions and so embarrassed to say that he is the first member, that I couldn't help but lie. This way, he will just think that I am opening a new branch and not that I am starting the organization. Luckily, Fujin was wearing a mask while talking with him. Otherwise, no transformation jutsu could have hidden how embarrassed he felt while answering those questions. Fortunately, he was shameless enough to maintain a straight voice. Fujin sighed and muttered, "It doesn't feel good to fool a man who is in so much sorrow. Leave it, I'll help him get his revenge. That should be enough to clear whatever is still left of my conscience. Besides, the target is just an elder from a small village. I can assassinate him even now." Fujin began walking towards the land of fire while thinking, I haven't thought of any details when it comes to my organization. My original motivation for creating an organization was very simple. If something unexpected happens, especially if that something isn't aligned with what I remember from the original series, and I need a safe place to escape to, then the organization should be my second home. The situation after fighting Darui was a perfect example of where an organization could have helped me a lot. It would have provided me with a third alternative which would be much safer than the other two. In addition, the organization could help me collect information. It could also help in collecting rare materials like elemental crystals or perhaps even chakra metal. But this isn't enough. An organization needs to have a goal. If it is completely centered around me and my needs, then the organization wouldn't last long. It needs to have a goal to bind everyone together. And that goal also needs to complement my needs somehow. In addition, I also need to decide on the structure of the organization, the chain of command, how much authority people would have at each level of the organization and so on. And most importantly, I need to have a method to control the people in my organization. A human's dream is never ending. Even if I rescue someone and provide them with a good life, he or she would only be grateful for a certain period of time. After that, they will begin wanting more. It'll be fine if I am at the helm of the organization. I could consistently brainwash them to keep following me. Unfortunately, I can't monitor them actively as I will be in Konoha. I'll need another method. Orochimaru controls his subordinates through the curse seal. Danzo uses the cursed tongue eradication seal. As for Akatsuki, pain is just too strong while Zetsu is the best scout. So no one will dare to oppose them. That said, despite their strength and skills, Orochimaru still betrayed them and attacked his state as an undercover agent. I doubt I could be a bigger deterrent than someone with Rinnegan. So I will need to create a curse seal to put some restrictions on the members of my organization. Otherwise, I'm better off without an organization. And I can't copy a seal from the Konoha library. There is no way Hiruzen and Danzo wouldn't be able to negate every seal in there. Sigh, so much work. That is why I have been so reluctant to actually implement this idea. Fujin continued on his way as he muttered to himself, and this is just a basic problem. After all, I could resolve these issues by myself. The most critical issue is recruitment. Who should I recruit in the organization? I stay in Konoha. So I can't just recruit little kids like Orochimaru did and train them personally. I need some Jounin level members to look after the organization while I am not there. It'd be best if that person is at elite Jounin level so that they can handle any unexpected events while I'm not there. Unfortunately, I don't know anyone like that who I could recruit. Almost all of them are loyal to their village or too volatile to be trusted. There might have been some suitable ones shown in Naruto. Unfortunately, I can't recall anyone. Apart from the important events and some resources, my memory from my previous life is just too vague. Sigh, I guess I will have to just wait for events like today. If Shigeki trains seriously, then perhaps he could reach the elite Jounin level. That'd probably be the best. Anyways, I'll leave this issue for the future. Regardless of whether I build a good organization or not, it won't be much use during the Fourth Great Ninja War. So I don't need to waste much time or effort on it until then. I can wait till I learn the Flying Thunder God and then begin considering this matter seriously. With teleportation, controlling an organization will become much easier. As he kept thinking deeply about this matter, Fujin entered the Land of Fire and reached Konoha the next evening. He went directly to Hiruzen's office and knocked on the door. Hiruzen was about to wrap up his work and leave when he heard the knock. He said, "Come in." Fujin entered. Hiruzen was surprised. He asked, "You are back so early?" Hiruzen thought, the news regarding the burning of the provision depot came just a few days ago. I expected him to create more chaos. Even if he didn't, the deserts would have been heavily monitored. How did he return so quickly? Fujin nodded and said, "Yeah, the place got very messy. It'll probably be better to call Commander Shikaku here. I have a lot of critical information to report." Hiruzen got the hint and looked at the Umbu ninjas hidden in the room. They nodded and immediately left. 3 stayed outside the room and kept watch while the last one went to call Shikaku. Hiruzen took a look at Fujin again and thought, now that I think about it, he had said that his summon could fly. I almost forgot about them. If he flew over, then it would make sense why he returned so quickly. Hiruzen asked, so, how was your trip? Fujin replied, not bad. I mostly stayed in Wind Capital. The city is much better looking than Fire Capital. Hiruzen nodded and said, yeah. In terms of beauty, it ranks second after Lightning Capital. Do you want to visit it next? Fujin thought, this old fox. It hasn't even been 5 minutes since I entered the village and he already wants me out. Meanwhile, Hiruzen also looked at Fujin meaningfully and thought, ever since he left, the consumption rate of the wind crystals dropped several times. Though there were quite a few Umbu who left around that time, he is the most suspicious one. Fujin immediately shook his head and said, such missions don't suit me, Grandpa. It's the first time since I joined the academy that I haven't trained for over 2 months. My body feels so out of tune and unresponsive. I'll stick to elimination missions. Hiruzen let out a chuckle and thought, if he is indeed the one who uses them so much, then it's no surprise that he has no will to leave the village. Hiruzen casually inquired about random stuff until Shikaku arrived and closed the door. Shikaku looked at Fujin and recalled the reports he received a few days ago. His expression became very peculiar. Hiruzen made a hand seal and activated the seals in the room. No one could eavesdrop on them anymore. He looked at Fujin and said, you can report now. Fujin nodded and became serious. He asked, did Kakashi-senpai report the mission to eliminate the bounty hunters? Shikaku nodded and said, he did. Just report about your activities in the Land of Wind. Fujin nodded and began reporting, all right. I infiltrated the country and found a trading caravan. It was from the Land of Bird and protected by 4 ninjas from a mercenary group called Kurogane no Sensen. I eliminated them and infiltrated the Wind Capital City using their disguises. Under that disguise, I eliminated 10 nobles on the list of nobles that were very loyal to Tsunagakure. All of them were eliminated using wind sword jutsu. I also killed a few samurais and left a couple injured so that all suspicions will fall on Suna. I followed it up by killing family members of 12 other nobles who had good relations with Tsunagakure a couple of weeks later. This was done while using the disguises of the Suna ninjas who came along with the elite Jounin Baki to investigate the previous killings. And I let the nobles see me and threatened them. Both these acts increased the resentment towards Suna among the nobles considerably. Though you'll have to check the degree of resentment with the use of other spies. Unfortunately, that forced the 4th Kazekage to come to the Wind Capital City. He had a long meeting with the Wind Daimyo. I am not sure what deal they reached. So I decided that it won't be a good idea to act once again as it might have destroyed the situation I created. Shikaku and Hiruzen nodded. They were aware of these developments. Though they didn't know the exact information, they had guessed Fujin's actions quite accurately. Unfortunately, they didn't have much clue about other events apart from the incident about provision depots. Neither was prepared for what Fujin was about to report. Chapter 280, Starting a War? Fujin continued, a couple of days later, 12 ninjas from Kurogane no Sensen came to the Wind Capital to investigate their missing ninjas. I took the opportunity to leave the city along with them. However, the Kazekage noticed us and probably got suspicious. He sent some Umbu to chase us. I led them deep into the desert and assassinated all 12 mercenaries and 12 Umbu. Shikaku and Hiruzen's eyes widened. Hiruzen thought, 12 umbu. Not bad at all. Even if I ignore all his other achievements, this alone should be more than enough to promote him. Meanwhile, Shikaku began sweating as he wondered, who the heck kills 12 enemy umbu during a promotion mission for the umbu captain post? It'd be an accomplishment even if they managed to kill 2. Fujin tossed a scroll at Shikaku and said, this scroll has the dead bodies of those 24 ninjas. I am not sure if any memories are still there, but you can try to check them nonetheless. Shikaku caught it and nodded. He reluctantly said, good work. Continue. Fujin continued reporting, I didn't leave any evidence behind. So I don't think Suna knows what happened to these 12 missing umbu. At best they could guess that they were killed by the mercenaries. Anyways, after killing them, I traveled to the western side of the Land of Wind. I first traveled to Sabakitsu. As per the instructions, I burnt one of the 2 provision depots entirely. I don't think any food was left behind. And I ended up killing at least 2 ninjas there. I am not sure if any more died after I left. I followed it up by killing 2 more nobles in the west who were listed and traveled to Shunkyuto City to kill the 3rd. However, the leading ninja there was quite smart. He set up a decoy and hid the noble. I killed the decoy and tried getting intel from the leading Chunin, but that guy was quite determined. He blew himself up. In order to find the real noble, I did a scheme. I disguised myself and my clones as Suna ninjas and announced that the assassin was dead. Then I spread rumors across the city that the noble was a coward who hid behind decoys and doesn't deserve to be a noble. In anger, the noble returned to the mansion. So I held a public execution for him and announced that he had cooperated with the assassin. In addition, I also announced that the Kazekage was upset with the city and decided to remove the protection provided by the Suna ninjas. And I immediately withdrew from the city. Shikaku and Hiruzen's eyes widened in shock as they immediately understood the impact of such an action. Shikaku almost cursed out, but Fujin continued speaking and said, the next day, around 80% of the people living in that city left and began migrating towards nearby villages and towns. They should be beginning to reach by now. So the news will soon spread and the Kazekage and the Wind Daimyo will soon begin receiving messages. At the same time, the resentment against Suna and Kazekage will spread among the cities in the west. So feel free to take advantage. Shikaku finally couldn't endure any more and cut him off. He asked loudly, you did what? His face had a look of disbelief. Hiruzen's expression was serious as well. He was finding the situation quite amusing until then. However, Fujin's actions were outrageous. Fujin tilted his head and asked, is that an issue? I thought you wanted to create chaos in the Land of Wind and ruin Tsunagakuru's reputation in the eyes of the daimyo, nobles, and citizens. Shikaku replied, yes, I wanted you to do that. But from your actions, do you want to split the Land of Wind into 2 countries? Shikaku's words made Fujin fall into thought. However, he soon shook his head and said, that's not feasible. That place is crawling with Suna ninjas right now. If you want to do it, I'd recommend waiting for a few months or perhaps even a couple of years for the resentment to properly spread and for the Suna ninjas to withdraw. Then you can take action. But I am not interested in going there anymore. Considering the complexity, I'll recommend you go there yourself and oversee the entire operation. Shikaku's expression became dark. He cursed internally, this brat. I was asking him sarcastically. Does he not get sarcasm, or is he messing with my head? He created such a huge mess and still wants me to create more? Who knows how those crazy bastards will react after suffering such a huge loss in peacetime? I'll have to plan the defense properly and actively monitor the situation for weeks or perhaps even months now. Of course, Fujin was messing with him. Though his expressions didn't change, he thought, I managed to break Hiruzen's poker face numerous times. This is a first for Shikaku to lose his calm and stop acting lazy in front of me. He, looks like I overdid my mission. Oh well, I guess he will take some effort to describe mission parameters from now on instead of just being a lazy ass. Shikaku couldn't see beyond Fujin's poker face. However, if he could hear Fujin's thoughts, he would have lost control on the spot. The mission parameters were left vague to make the Umbu ninjas push themselves to achieve their best. It wasn't so that someone could start a war. Hiruzen was also looking at Shikaku's expression. He thought, if the situation wasn't so serious, I would have found his expressions hilarious. He looked at Fujin and asked, did you return after this? Fujin shook his head and said, no. Despite the difficulty, that city didn't receive any reinforcements. I was confused as to why Suna hadn't sent reinforcements. So I decided to test out the next city as well. Unfortunately, that was a trap. I was attacked by 12 Jounins and the puppeteer elite Jounin, Odaka. The city itself had over 100 ninjas waiting for me. Shikaku and Hiruzen were shocked once again. Fujin continued, I killed 1 Jounin, 2 Jounins, and 4 Umbu ninjas before running away from the city. Unfortunately, many of them also knew Wind instantaneous body jutsu and the desert offered no cover. So they began chasing me. Though I was faster, there was an ambush squad waiting for me. The ambush squad was led by the elite Jounin Sabaku Susumu. His genjutsu prevented me from using my jutsus. In addition, his squad also had a Jinchuriki. They stalled me, allowing a few Suna ninjas to catch up with me. Just when Hiruzen and Shikaku thought that they couldn't be surprised anymore, they were. Shikaku dumbfoundedly muttered, the Jinchuriki. Hiruzen asked, the Kazeki's son. Fujin nodded. Shikaku had a very bad feeling. He thought, I can feel it. Whatever he will say next will be very troublesome. Why didn't I give him proper mission parameters? Unfortunately, there was no way for Shikaku to correct his error. Fujin continued, fortunately, the Jinchuriki lost control over his emotions and did a stupid wide-range attack. I used the opportunity to injure him. That made him lose control over his tailed beast and began transforming. I used the distraction to kill Susumu and retreated from there. This time, neither Shikaku nor Hiruzen had any words to say. Both were left speechless by Fujin's achievements during the mission. Fujin enjoyed the expressions on their faces. It was a treat to watch. He tossed Shikaku another scroll and said, this scroll has Susumu's body. I have preserved it properly. He could use genjutsu by emitting chakra into the wind. I want that jutsu. Shikaku looked at the scroll and looked back at Fujin as he thought, not only did he kill an elite Jounin, he also brought his body back. Does he want to be the Umbu captain or the Hokage? Still, this is good. Susumu's genjutsu methods were quite unique. If a few ninjas can learn it, Konoha's strength will increase once again. Hiruzen said, you can't use those techniques in the open for the time being. Fujin nodded and said, yes. I'll ensure that there are no witnesses. Hiruzen nodded and asked, anything else? His question alerted Shikaku once again. Fortunately, Fujin shook his head and answered, no. I wanted to create more mess and kill a few more Jounins in the desert. But the number of ninjas was too high and I wasn't sure how much destruction the Jinchuriki could cause. So I withdrew. Shikaku finally let out a sigh of relief. He thought, Thankfully he withdrew. I thought he killed dozens of more ninjas using the Jinchuriki as a distraction. Hiruzen also looked relieved. He stared at Fujin as he re-evaluated his strength and began thinking of a matter: is he also a suitable candidate? Both Hiruzen and Shikaku were lost in thoughts. After a minute, Fujin looked at them with a deadpan expression and wondered, did they forget about me? He asked, will I be promoted? Both Shikaku and Hiruzen looked at him immediately. Shikaku cursed in his mind, do you think we would dare not promote you? If we give you another promotion mission, won't you directly start a war between the two countries?